Lahmian sisterhood. Of all the bloodlines that we have discussed, I find it fitting to discuss the most powerful of them all, before I touch the most well-known of them all. You see, I don't care for the Lahmian sisterhood as they usually don't possess any wickedly disgusting magics, and neither do they care to command large, imposing legions of the dead. But it's in that uncaring culture that they have created what I find to be the most interesting when it comes to story perspectives. You see, the Lahmian sisterhood originate with the very first vampire, Neferata. Now, after Neferata's fall from her glorious city of Lamia, and the loss of every single vampire that she created, as they all pretty much betrayed her because they hated her for her ego and her selfish desires, Neferata was pretty much shocked. In such a shock, she went from the queen of the damned to now the vagrant of the wasteland, hiding among the rocks and mountains, living like a hermit as she watched her home get destroyed by men. Men, the very ones who would conduct war amongst themselves and destroy the greatest things the world has ever made. Her fixation on men and their downfall has led to Neferata shunning all men. Hence why in her court it's always composed of women, females. There is a small addendum regarding that few men do get the privileges of the blood kiss and get turned to vampires as Lahmian sisterhoods, but they do not get what you would probably confuse it as being inviting to her court. No. You're of their bloodline, but you are of not their political faction. You are not allowed in their court. You're not allowed to experience the greatness of their bloodline, except for cats. Neferata herself has a very lengthy story, but instead I'll cover that in a separate video, as she really does deserve her own lore. But let's instead talk about the sisterhood, the very bloodline she created. You see, when it comes to recruiting the Lahmian sisterhood, they only conscript the ladies who show a combination of talent, magic, and deceit. If you possess these qualities, and possess beauty on top of all of that, then you would be open to joining their ranks after many years spent in their halls practicing these arts of manipulation, subterfuge, and dark magics. Usually these women can be, well, consorts is the more political, nice term, but prostitutes is also another one. The only issue with this is that Neferata must have the approval of your blood kiss, and therein lies the issue. Neferata is not above jealousy, and to give a young woman who is smarter and more beautiful than Neferata the blood kiss is just out of the question. That's heresy. It's not allowed. Something that Neferata denies, as she claims that the women that she doesn't recruit have an issue, when most of her handmaidens and those of the sisterhood all pretty much agree that, yeah, it's usually jealousy that stops Neferata from recruiting the best of the best female agents that they could ever recruit. So, they kind of hurt themselves in this way. Either way, the Lahmian sisterhood has garnered a strength that has reached far farther than any vampire bloodline to date. Something that the von Karsteins are very bitter about, as they view themselves as true nobility. Yet, the Lahmian sisterhood, they're nobles and they exist in every court that is around the world. Whether it's in Bretonnia or even in the Dark Elves, they have some grasp somewhere with just about everybody. Using the great cleavage that they have in the dark magics to influence people's minds and memories, the ladies of the Lahmian sisterhood wiggle their way as mistresses or even wives of notable lords and rulers. Some of the purpose of these agents is simply infiltration, in case the time ever arises where the resources of this man that they're marrying can be used, or sometimes to assassinate, as the individual they're marrying does pose a risk. It has happened far too often where a threat to the sisterhood was easily resolved by misguiding mortals to clash into each other. A witch hunter, for example, may have stumbled upon a blood-dried corpse, but he's trespassing in Bretonian lands. A woman who is an agent of the sisterhood that's been assigned to that province may issue a magical command that demands a local knight to challenge the witch hunter to a duel to the death for trespassing and besmirching the lady's honor. Another possibility is that the sisterhoods, they live in the mountains, the great mountain called Silver Peak. If an orc wog or a chaos warband got way too close to home, the sisterhood doesn't need to conjure an army. No. Instead, they just simply need to tell a group of Empire or Kislevites about the impending threat. Some women may even be dispatched on caravans that are destined to get robbed, so that way they can feed false information to the people who save them when their carriage gets attacked, making whatever the threat it was seem worse than what it is for the people that are rescuing this woman. The Lahmian sisterhood as it stands is arguably the strongest of all the bloodlines due to this insane political reach. But you may wonder how the sisters infiltrate so well. Well, the truth is they undergo very extreme training in Silver Peak. Here they surround themselves with dangerous holy artifacts and must pass the training by just simply hiding their visible disgust and pain from being near such items. You see, most vampires, this includes Strigoi, blood dragons, anybody, they recoil in fear and anguish at the sight of holy trinkets. But a Lahmian sister, she wouldn't even bat an eye to it. This is clever manipulation of hiding their body language to make it even more difficult to snuff them out during an interrogation. Another thing is that they're all women, so the usual tactics of acting helpless and displaying their innocent youth to older men makes the old men deem them like daughters, where they would sacrifice their life to protect these poor, helpless fiends. Despite all the smokes and mirrors, in the end, some Lahmians do get caught. This leads to their other strength, their blood. You see, the longer the generation line, the less potent a vampire is. The Lahmian sisterhood, though, have Neferata herself as their leader. This makes them all insanely powerful, whereas other vampire bloodlines have to make do with diluted blood, that is like 6th generation or beyond. So while a Lahmian vampire may only be a vampire for 2 decades, they could possess a far greater power than a 500-year-old von Karstein, simply because the blood kiss they received is pure and from the very first vampire that ever existed in history. Now, despite everything being in the Lahmians' advantage, the real goal of the sisterhood is pretty simple. Neferata's goal. Neferata still makes her court dress and practice Lahmian customs, her long-dead city from the far, far away lands. As such, the sisterhood know that Neferata just wants to rebuild her old ruined home city. Yet, Neferata keeps preaching that they will one day rule the entire world, despite the fact that she's crippling her own people by not recruiting the best handmaidens, and by constantly focusing on her old home instead of taking advantage of political turmoil that exist in the modern days of the world. This, of course, has led to the sisterhood having to take some leadership and issues into their own hands, their own orders, their own agents operating in secret as they wish to show Neferata a weakness that would prompt her to finally exit the courtroom and take over the world. But as it stands, nothing sways her, and her finding out that her agents are conducting business behind her back pisses her off to no end. Despite the fact that these agents are utterly loyal to her, they are blood bonded to her, they are so compelled to help her that even when they betray her, they're betraying her to help her. This is why, despite having so many advantages, the Lahmian sisterhood remain in the shadows. It isn't the power, it isn't the lack of glory. It's simply just Neferata being a flawed being that won't give up the past, clinging to over 2 millennia of history. She fails to move on and take an active role in her own court. Her very life is stagnant. She is, as should she remain, a living, breathing corpse. And for the Lahmian sisterhood, they will just have to live and accept the fact that the only way forward is Neferata's plan, despite it being a plan that will never come to fruition. They are permanently bound to her will as her servants, and as such, they are permanently bound to her obituary, which is that she will not do a damn thing. This has been the Lahmian Sisterhood. I hope you lads enjoyed. See you guys next time. Peace.